So we dug in, and within a half hour, I had a moment where I sat there and went, where has this been all my life? This is unbelievable. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Salesforce for Recruiters. I'm your host, as always, Brad Owens. And for today, in one of the early episodes, I want to tell you about my journey with Salesforce, about how I actually ended up realizing that Salesforce was the applicant tracking system I was missing all along. I want to tell you a little bit more about that today. So, best place to start a story at the very beginning, right? So I graduated college back in 2007. No idea what I wanted to be. And I saw an ad for someone looking for someone who was good on the phone, who's personable, who wanted to be working from home. I was like, yes, sign me up. This sounds perfect. It was literally in a neighborhood that was about 2 miles from where I was living at the time. So I went, let's go. Show up at this guy's house. Just like, no idea what I'm getting into. Like, this is a little strange. Turns out this guy was doing recruiting from his house. And he was interested in growing because he, like all recruiting firms, it's simply just a volume thing. So I joined him as kind of employee one of this organization to start recruiting. And a few years go by, a few more years go by. All of a sudden I look up, I'm a decade in. We've grown the firm. Everything's doing amazingly well. I end up running the thing. It's just going incredibly well. But throughout that entire experience, one thing that kept becoming very, very clear in my mind was how important technology was going to be to us. We literally started in that recruiting firm with spreadsheets. That's all we had. And then we moved to applicant tracking system that was very difficult to use. It was called PC Recruiter. Really tough. It just didn't fit what we needed to. All the respect in the world, it just didn't fit what we needed, right? It wasn't actually helping us run our business the way we wanted to. Then we moved from that. We had Bullhorn for a little bit, Crelate for a little bit. We were kind of all over the place. We just never really found that ATS solution that was for us. One of the favorite quotes that I've ever learned over my time recruiting and since then was everyone's favorite ATS is the one they're moving to. And I think that's totally true because we really felt like the next one that we jumped into was going to be it for us. And the next one we jumped into was going to be the right one for us. And it never really was. There was always stuff that was missing. We always used to feel like we could do a little bit better if we had these newer features of this newer thing. We never really found the one for us. Each time we had to go through that painful transition over to something new, get the data out of here, move the data into there, realize for the next 6 months, all right, what data did we miss? What data did we not have that we had before? Let's relearn how to use everything we've been using. So what happens when you go through something like that as a firm owner? I'm going to pause there because I want you all to start thinking about what might happen to you all, or maybe what's already happened to you all. In our case, we ended up having data on spreadsheets everywhere. None of it was like that system of truth. None of it was like that one record that we could look at and say, yes, here's everything we have on this candidate. Here's everything we know about this client, whatever it might be. We still were using our manila folders in our file systems because that was like when I started recruiting, that's what we had, right? We had manila folders with resumes we literally had printed out and we had to send off to people. Like we were just getting into email running business, right? It was just that very, very start. A lot of hiring managers that we worked with were old school. They wanted to really hold something in their hand. Shoot, I faxed resumes still. I faxed resumes. God, how old am I? So when I started doing all of this recruiting and I started realizing that there was information on spreadsheets everywhere, I'm like, this has got to change. Like something has to give. So around the same kind of time, started realizing like my days in recruiting, I just felt like it was getting quite repetitive. I was in the same niche forever. I was asking the exact same kinds of questions. I was doing the exact same kinds of things over and over and over and over again. I was recruiting for these large Fortune 500 companies. And what I realized, and when I started getting more involved in my local area and I started going to like small business meetings just to see what's going on, I literally just wanted to hear what other small businesses were dealing with. One of the things that I started realizing is all the hiring information, everything that I knew about how the best companies in the world hire, the smaller companies just had no idea how to do. I mean, they were struggling with, what do I ask in an interview? What is an employee handbook? Like the very, very basics of running a business, of what are core values? Like how do we start hiring towards those? They just had no clue. So I went, this might be a fantastic thing for me to dig into. So I jumped into helping small businesses hire. And a big part of that was helping them understand how to keep track of all this data, where to put it, how to build up applicant tracking systems, like just help them really start making sense of their entire hiring process. And that was just like 20 years of experience in 3 years. It was unbelievable what it was like. So in doing all of that, I was starting to develop a reputation for someone that could help solve hiring problems. I was doing some speaking engagements all throughout Northeast. I even went over to California, started doing some. So I was all over the U.S. giving speeches and giving presentations about hiring, about culture and how important that is. And I was met coming off stage by someone at an event I did in Cleveland that said, "Hey, we have all of those problems that you just described there. You want to come work for us and help us solve those?" I went, sure, why not? It was just literally spur of the moment. Let's do it. This sounds like a fun project. Let's go. So here I was, now director of recruiting for a publicly traded company here in Cleveland. And I joined, had a team of recruiters, and what ended up happening was we were on a very, 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 very bad applicant tracking system. Everything we did in that recruiting department, I got in and maybe within like a week went, this is not going to work. So I went back to the basics, just like everyone does. We started up a spreadsheet. We started up a Google Doc. We all started recruiting out of that thing. We kept track of all of the candidates that we had, that we were in process with. We shared it with the hiring managers so that they could see everything. Like, it was working. It was good. It was okay. Could it be better? Yeah, big time. So I always just had in the back of my mind, like, we've got to fix this at some point. But I was more interested in locking down the processes, making everything repeatable, and then figuring out how to actually translate that into tech. Once I hit that point, I just started looking around the organization to see what other people were using. I was like, all right, let's try and decrease our spend here. If we don't need to buy a different piece of software for the organization, let's not. So our sales team at that point was using Salesforce. So I booked a meeting with our IT leader at that point, and we sat down and I went, just show me Salesforce. Show me, like, why would I even consider wanting to use Salesforce? Show me how the sales team is using it right now. So we dug in, and within a half hour, I absolutely kid you not, I had a moment where I sat there and went, where has this been all my life? This is unbelievable. How come the sales team is the only team that gets to use this? Why can't the recruiters be able to use that? And the response that I got of the two other people that were in the room who were administering our Salesforce at the time, they said, well, Salesforce isn't a recruiting system. And I had to pause. I started thinking about what sales truly is. Sales, you get a lead. You work that lead until it's an actual thing that you feel like is a good opportunity for you that you can then go work on and try and win. Then all of a sudden you win that opportunity, and then you can start putting all the contracts and everything in place, and then you can start mapping that entire client and account relationship. That sounds a whole heck of a lot like recruiting, doesn't it? We go out, we find a job that we could potentially fill. We work with that hiring manager until they say, yep, they sign our contract and say we can work on that thing. And then now we have the opportunity to fill that role. We have an open job. Now we just need to track things against that job. So I started talking to the Salesforce team at this organization for a little bit. I went, we could absolutely do this. This is a thing that can be done in Salesforce. My gosh, we're about to solve everything in Salesforce. Now, a bunch of different things happened at that point. The company lost their main investor. Things started going sideways. We didn't end up actually implementing all of this. But that moment right then was the point where I went, there's something huge here that Salesforce isn't paying attention to. Because I had a bunch of different misconceptions. One, I thought that Salesforce was only a sales tool. Absolutely not. I was absolutely wrong. Two, I thought that Salesforce was just crazy expensive. It's not. Salesforce has tiered pricing. They have multiple different things that you can buy. Salesforce is for everyone. You can find a license that'll be affordable for you. And then I thought Salesforce is crazy difficult. It's complicated. It's going to be hard to use. I was a recruiter of this point of, 14 years? I then took it upon myself to say, I'm going to learn Salesforce. I want to know truly what it takes to work inside Salesforce. A month later, I was a certified admin for Salesforce. I learned everything about it. I learned how to set it all up. I learned how to make my own apps, how to do everything that I needed to do to survive inside Salesforce in a month. And I was a career recruiter. If I was able to come up to speed on that, I went, this is an absolute game changer. So at that point, I went, I want to make a bigger impact here in Salesforce for recruiting. So I figured out what it takes to get hired at Salesforce. I started networking my butt off. I started learning everything I possibly could. I ended up getting hired at Salesforce. I was in their Service Cloud division, which is kind of their customer service thing, which for me, I was able to tell the story of recruiting through customer service. You end up having conversations with candidates who need to be they need to be kept in touch with constantly, right? We need to make sure that we keep them updated. We don't want to have this recruiting black box where they apply to something and then never hear from us again. If they're a good candidate, we want to continue talking with them and continue keeping up with them. That's exactly what Salesforce Service Cloud was good for. And that's all I really knew at that point was like, Service Cloud is the other thing that Salesforce sells. It'll be great. So I got in to Salesforce and started working with a bunch of different customers and started helping them understand what it can really do. And then light bulbs started going off. I started hearing about all these other products that Salesforce had. I was on the inside, so I was getting all this new information about where the development is going and what's possible and I was literally in a job where I could dream up possibilities for what companies could do with this software. So that got me just on a completely new level. I started getting deeper and deeper and deeper in. We had a recruiting group who was starting to stand up a recruiting vertical at Salesforce. And I went, that's where I have to be. I've got to be a part of this. I know how this can be applied to recruiting. I was there. I sat in their shoes. And then, maybe 2 or 3 months later, there I was, helping them stand up the staffing and recruiting vertical at Salesforce. I was like, this is it. This is the pinnacle. This is amazing. So I truly started helping out the largest organizations in the world. We were working with firms like Robert Half and Elitis and Adecco, and they've got Manpower Group. They've got Randstad, all of those organizations in the world that we started working with, right? And I started seeing how they were all using Salesforce, and a couple different things started coming to mind. I started understanding the ecosystem of what Salesforce truly is. And Salesforce, yes, is an application that you can build on. If you have the expertise, you can absolutely build what you need inside of Salesforce. It is not a sales tool. It is not. It happens to have the name sales in the title. That's how it kind of started. It is so much more than that. Right now, I feel like Salesforce is like the best platform with the worst possible name because you can really build. It doesn't have to be Salesforce. It could be Marketing Force. It could be Service Force. It could be Recruiting Force. It's whatever you want it to be. It really is. And I'll go through that in this podcast. Like Salesforce for recruiters. My mission is to help everyone understand the power of what Salesforce can actually do for recruiting. Everyone dismisses it as just a sales tool. It's not. It's absolutely not. So getting back to my kind of journey at Salesforce, I started understanding the ecosystem, what was really out there. I understood that, yes, you can build everything you want to, but Salesforce also has this thing that they call their App Exchange. The App Exchange is just like the iOS App Store. And matter of fact, Mark Benioff actually sold appstore.com to Steve Jobs at the time to set up the App Store for iOS. It just wasn't really ready in the Salesforce ecosystem, so he sold it to him. So the App Store truly came from what Mark Benioff had thought of a good idea. So here goes the iPhone. It blows up with all these new apps and all these different things you can build on it. Mark Benioff and the Salesforce team's like, we can do the same thing for Salesforce. They started building that. So now there's an entire app ecosystem for Salesforce. So think of Salesforce like your iPhone. When you got it out of the box, it works. It can be a phone. You can text on it. If you want to add your email program, you can do email. But then all of a sudden, you can have a completely different experience than the person sitting next to you. My iPhone, guarantee, looks completely different than another person's iPhone. Yeah. So if you are on Salesforce, you can buy applications to add on, or you can buy someone else's version of what they think Salesforce can be. It's called a Salesforce reseller. So they will sell you something that looks like what they think you will need for your day-to-day actions, and you can use their system. Now, you don't truly get the benefits of Salesforce of being to truly build on the platform and expand and buy everything that Salesforce has got and add all the different features, but you get enough, right? You got at that point some kind of solution. And there were a few different applicant tracking system solutions that were out there. They had built the kind of things that if they were to start from Salesforce from scratch, they would build. And now you've got your applicant tracking system. They're okay reasons to do that. If you truly just want I want to put my business's hands in their hands. I want to buy just like I'm used to buying of an applicant tracking system. It just happens to be Salesforce based. It's not truly Salesforce native, it's Salesforce based. So you can buy one of those. That's great. But what I realized is that there's also feature add-ons that you can get for Salesforce. So you can have a native Salesforce experience. You can have everything that Mark Benioff and the crazy Salesforce folks are designing for you. You can take advantage of all of their thousands upon thousands of developers and their $1 billion of development for AI and all the others, and then add on features that you need. So there are feature add-on licenses as well. And I realized at that point that my goodness, adding on features to Salesforce is absolutely where it's at. Why would anyone in their right mind want to redesign Salesforce and say, we know better than you, Salesforce, we got this, and create an app? I went, it's got to be a bolt-on solution. So here comes these two folks who I had started to know and started to understand through the Salesforce journey that we were on of building the staffing and recruiting vertical, and they start Assemble. Assemble was an applicant tracking system feature set. So you get all of Salesforce, all the amazingness, and you can choose any kind of level of Salesforce that you want. Do you want to add on everything that Salesforce has got, or do you just truly want to just have access to the system and just start to recruit in it? They built the Assemble applicant tracking system. That truly is a feature set add-on to Salesforce. I saw what they were doing. I went, this is absolutely the future of recruiting. I am staking my career on it. And I moved over to Assemble. That's why I'm wearing my Assemble shirt today. To let you all at least know my journey, right, and where I'm coming from. So the Assemble applicant tracking system comes with some features that people would need, like being able to track against jobs, being able to track candidates and resumes, and be able to do kind of the basics of putting together lists and things. And it will give you the basics of what you need to run an applicant tracking system inside of Salesforce. Now, what you build on top of that and what you create for yourself and how you reflect your unique business process, it's completely up to you. The tools are given to you to do that. So now you're coming from a journey where, let's say, all of us recruiters, we're used to buying pre-furnished condos. Okay, now stick with me. I promise this will work. So we're used to buying pre-furnished condos where we show up and we say, we want a place to live. Great, we got you. Here you go. You tell us kind of what floor you want to be on, but every single thing you're going to get into is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo with furniture to be able to live, watch TV, eat, whatever you need. The appliances, everything else is there. Go. You've now got yourself a place to live. And we've all been okay with that, right? But there comes a time where some people love living in condos. They love having everything pre-furnished. They feel like it's great for them. They got what they need. They can do everything else on their own or whatever else. That might be perfect for some people. But the reason that we have the housing market that we do currently is because people love customizing homes and having the exact experience that they want for themselves. So the Assemble plus Salesforce solution is like a custom home. You can, out of the box, if you wanted to just buy the model, right? You can have that experience, but you can put it where you want. You can put it on your own lot. You can, experience what you want to experience out of having that home and bring in the furniture that you want and make sure it works for you in the neighborhood that you want and that kind of thing. You can do that with the Assemble plus Salesforce solution. If you wanted to completely gut it and build up from the foundation and have the exact kind of experience that you want, you can also do that too. So now you have much more flexibility, much more flexibility. Because you're open to the entire Salesforce ecosystem, which I explained has the App Exchange and all these others, you now have the ability to build anything that you truly want. And what doesn't integrate with Salesforce? There's so much out there. So you don't have to worry about buying an ATS that integrates with the job boards that you want, or buying the ATS that integrates with your phone provider that you wanted, or being limited in any way just because that's what they've designed. You have now Salesforce available to you. And all these tools that people have been using on Salesforce for years and years and years, you now have access to as a recruiter just because you chose to have an ATS that is built on top of Salesforce or natively inside Salesforce as a feature set, right? So I saw this and I went, this is absolutely the future. This is why Assemble is going to just be recruiting on Salesforce forever. So I moved over. I then had become a part of Assemble. I was a part of the journey from really the very, very early days. And now I get to show recruiters across the world, truly across the world, what Salesforce can truly do for their business. And now I've seen so many people have the exact same experience that I did of, oh my gosh, where's this been all my life? That I wanted to take that to more. So this Salesforce for Recruiters show will be that. It will be me coming to you all, talking about what I know about Salesforce, talking to you about what I've discovered in my journey, what I see people using Salesforce for, the partners, the apps, the people that are truly making a difference and showing the power of Salesforce for Recruiters. I absolutely stake my career on Salesforce being the best possible solution for recruiters, and want to share with you all why, what my journey was, what I started realizing, what I've been learning along the way, the tips that I've understood that would make it just invaluable for a recruiting organization. I'm going to share all that on this show. So that's what Salesforce for Recruiters is really going to be. I want to invite you all to follow along on my journey, to learn as I learn, to share in what I've already understood so that I can help you be more successful. Truly, I want to share my journey to help you be more successful. I've seen it just change recruiting firms' trajectory. I've seen it happen, and I want to make that happen for you as well. So come along with me, follow along, subscribe to Salesforce for Recruiters. This is going to be everywhere. It's going to be a video first show. We're going to do YouTube videos. We're going to do LinkedIn content. It's going to be all over the place. There's going to be an audio only podcast if you want to listen to that. It'll be available on everywhere you want it to be. So whether it's Spotify or Apple or Google or wherever you listen to your podcast, it will be there. I invite you to follow along, and if you want any more information at all, it's going to be salesforceforrecruiters.com, salesforceforrecruiters.com. If there's anything specific that you're curious about of whether Salesforce can do or not, send me a note, hello@bradowens.com. It's hello@bradowens.com, and I'll answer that question. I'll answer it on air, and we're going to do live shows. We're going to do all sorts of fun stuff. So come along. I really appreciate you listening. If you've listened this far in the episode, you are truly someone who understands the value that you're going to get out of Salesforce. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you at least listening to this intro episode. We're going to do so much more. Follow along, Salesforce for Recruiters. We're going to have a fun journey. Thanks so much.